This is a story about a girl named Olive. She has quite a story, and while I call it a story, really it's just her first chapter of what is to come. It's long and lengthy, and even though I'm cutting out so many of the details, it's still going to be super long. So I appreciate anyone listening, watching, and her story is just, it's one worth telling, and it's one worth listening to. She is incredible, and we're going to honor her for all that she is. Some disclaimers: I may cry during this, I may hold it together, please don't judge me. It's really, sometimes the emotions come flooding back and I can't control myself, and I lose it. Sometimes I blurt the story out and I don't even bat an eye. I am still deeply processing and healing. Everything kind of was a huge whirlwind for me the last, since January when we received this bad news. Things changed rapidly. They were constantly developing new things, good things, bad things. It was a roller coaster ride. I never really had the chance to process any part of it before we were on to the next. And then obviously everything ended well, but I'm still dealing with all of that trauma. It doesn't just all go away because it was a happy ending. I wish it did, but that's not reality. So, just give me grace. This is also very awkward for me. I have gone through infertility, and when you leave those appointments, it's so much information. I would get in my car and write everything down, and journal log everything that was talked about. So as soon as we got the bad information, this pregnancy, I started the same thing. I would get in my car and go to my notes section, and I would, just blurb everything out, because you really are in such a blur and you can't keep track. I'm at weekly appointments with different doctors. You can't keep track of what's what. I'm very type A in the way of I like everything spelled out for me. So I printed out my notes because the camera is really going to trip me up. If you caught me on the street and asked me our story, I could tell you every last detail, word for word, thought for thought, step by step, without this. But I know I'm so nervous, and I'm going to get really tripped up by being on camera and knowing that people are watching and I'm talking and video recording. This is not my forte. So if you see me looking at this or shuffling through, there's a lot of it. I won't read it all. It's just, it's just here to help me if I need to regroup and look down. So another disclaimer before I get started is I really wanted to try and go through this without using any professional names. It's really hard not to. I tried, and it's not going to happen. So I just want to put it out there. I'm going to talk about Virtua. Some people may jump on board with thinking that I'm bringing a negative light to them. That's really not the case. I love Virtua. I work for Virtua. I strongly believe in their labor and delivery, their maternal fetal medicine program, their doctors. I had 2 boys there. I delivered 2 healthy boys there, had amazing experience, went through MFM with the boys. Maternal fetal medicine is the high risk doctors. I went through there with the boys and had a great experience. And if I were pregnant again and having another baby, I'd be right back at Virtua. I'd be delivering there. I'd be seeing their maternal fetal medicine. No doctor knows everything, and in this case, Virtua didn't have much information, and they were honest and upfront about that. This area of pregnancy unknown is unknown. Even CHOP attested to that. So I just don't want it to, doctors don't know everything, and if a doctor is telling you that they know everything, then they're lying to you, and you should get a second opinion anyway. So I just don't want anyone to think that like we chose CHOP and Virtua did a disservice to us. They were kind and compassionate, and you know, they didn't know about this, and they didn't know enough information to give me and support me through it, and that's okay. And that's why we have the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and that's why people from all over the world go to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. They're just better. They're better at everything. They just are, and we are so, so blessed to have them in our backyard. I mean, so blessed. So anyway, I just wanted to say that up front. I want to honor our girl. It doesn't help that I'm an ugly crier too. Like, so that makes me so nervous that I'm like on camera crying. The fact that I'm crying, and then the fact that it's not cute. I am being really, really vulnerable in putting her story out there. But like I said, I want to honor her. And the hope is always, by sharing the lows in your life, your struggles, is to hope to one day be someone else's survival guide. And that's what I hope comes from this. I hope that you see my daughter as a miracle. And I hope that if you find yourself in the trenches, that you use this information, you use our story to pull yourself out. I want to tell people that medical professionals don't know everything. Okay? It's okay to question a doctor that you love. It's okay to question a situation, to follow that feeling inside, that mother's instinct. It usually doesn't lie. And it's usually not screaming like, red flag, mama knows best. It's sometimes it's just this little bit of like, this isn't right. This doesn't feel right. It's just, maybe this isn't us. Maybe this isn't my story, you know? It's to show that miracles do happen. They don't always happen, and I will never know why we were spared of the heartache and grief that we were supposed to endure. I will never understand how we got to be the miracle case. But I can tell you this, from the minute I got the bad news, the minute that they told me it would take a miracle, a little tiny voice inside said, I wonder if we could be the miracle. I wonder. Like, it wasn't screaming from the rooftops. I was fully on board with understanding the prognosis and grieving that. I was not, I'm bringing this baby home. It wasn't that at all for me. I had girlfriends that never wrote her off. I had girlfriends that were out shopping for her, buying her 2 toddler stuff, clearance shopping, while I'm telling them we're not bringing this baby home. And they're like, oh, well, she's got 2 toddler Christmas pajamas at my house, so I'll wait and give them to you when she's here. And that's sort of hope. You know, so anyway, get the second, third, and fourth opinion. Trust that mother's instinct, and do believe that miracles do happen, because they do, and they don't happen for everyone. And, you know, we don't always see this side of things, especially, what her prognosis was. So anyway, let's get started. We had just found out that she was a girl, which we could not believe. We just had in our minds that we were going to have all boys. We are still shocked that we have a girl. And it is truly different and it is truly amazing. But anyway, around 16 weeks, or right at 16 weeks, I was having a lot of abnormal stomach cramping, really bad. And I was doing all the things, hydrating and laying down and resting and doing it all. Still really, really, really bad cramps. So I called my doctor and they were like, yeah, come on in, we're going to check you out. So I did. And everything checked out. They examined me and everything was all good and fine. And while I was at that appointment, they're like, you're 16 weeks. You were going to be here later in the week anyway for your routine checkup. We'll just do it now so you don't have to come back. And they drew blood work for my AFP, which is the alpha fetal protein, which looks for your risk of the baby having neural tube defects, the most common one, spina bifida. So this is like routine pregnancy blood work. So they draw my blood and send me home. This is like a Monday. So Tuesday night, I go to bed and I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning to pee. And I get back into bed and I can't fall asleep. I get really bad insomnia when I'm pregnant. So I'm laying in bed and I go on my phone and I'm scrolling and I check my email and I have an email from LabCorp saying that my results are in. Open them up and there it is in bright red that my AFP level is markedly elevated. And, it just didn't say elevated, like it had to throw that. And it was, and I was losing my shit. I was up all night. I'm texting a good friend that's a NICU nurse and we're looking stuff up and, I'm like devastated. So I wake up, my husband wakes up the next morning. We call the doctor. She's like, it's just a greater risk. I have seen it be elevated and nothing come of it, but we're going to send you right over to MFM, maternal fetal medicine, for a scan to look at the baby's brain and spinal cord. So I have to wait 2 days. This is Tuesday into Wednesday. So I have to wait until Thursday to get over to MFM. So I go over there and maternal fetal medicine is the high risk doctors. Through Virtua, I saw them with the boys and we go in and how it kind of works, you get this extensive ultrasound and they're wonderful. They go over everything with you. There's a big screen that you can watch exactly what's happening. The techs are wonderful. They tell you everything that's going on. They're not giving you the bad news, but they're like, oh, your baby's heartbeat. And, she was waving with her arm up and they're like, oh, look at her wave, and it's wonderful. It's a really long ultrasound. And then they put you in a consult room and the doctor goes over all of your images. So you're in this consult room waiting for a long time, probably 30, 40 minutes. They go over all of your images and then they come in and they speak to you. So the doctor comes in and when we looked at the brain and the spinal cord with the ultrasound tech, she showed us everything and she was like, everything looks normal with the brain and the spinal cord, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, so I'm sitting in that, consult room, on cloud 9. I'm like, oh my gosh, we were spared, blah, blah, blah. The doctor comes in and she says, yes, everything looked normal as far as the brain and spinal cord. Baby's heart rate was strong, blah, blah, blah. Baby's growing on track. She went over an extensive question that she had about my history and everything. And then she dropped the bomb. My amniotic fluid was severely low. And I'm thinking back, I was so focused on the brain and spinal cord, I didn't even realize that there was no fluid around the baby. I've been in a million ultrasounds. And I was so caught up, I never even realized. So she counseled us that fluid at the 16 to 20 week mark is what she was telling me is crucial for developing the internal organs, specifically the lungs. What happens is amniotic fluid starts to be swallowed by the baby and help develop those internal organs, specifically the lungs, and then the baby essentially pees it out and swallows. And that's kind of how that process happens. So without fluid this early in pregnancy, during that crucial time, she said her lungs will never develop. So this puts the baby at risk of, with the low fluid, this puts the baby at risk of cord compression and stillbirth. And even if like that were to never happen and like the baby made it in utero to her due date, that once I delivered and they cut the cord, the baby's lifeline to me, that her lungs would not be developed and there would be nothing that anyone could do, and she would not survive. So they counseled me that in these cases, the thing to do would be medically interrupt the pregnancy, is the words that they used, which meant terminate the pregnancy. I was completely numb. I felt like I was on the ceiling of that room, looking down on this situation, and like I was sitting in the wrong room. This is not us. This is not happening. I couldn't stop thinking about how slowly and carefully she spoke. I have worked in the ER since I was 18 years old, and I have been in countless rooms where really bad news is being delivered to people. And I know the lingo and the therapeutic way of speaking, of being really, really honest and upfront, but really gentle at the same time. And that is exactly what she was doing. She was using, every word had a pause, because she was thinking about how she was going to explain this, to be really, really upfront about it, but really gentle, because it was essentially a death sentence that she was handing me, one way or another. Your baby's not making it. So I right away conveyed that interrupting the pregnancy was not something I was willing to do. My choice, no choice was a good choice, right? I either interrupt the pregnancy myself and make that choice, or I choose to continue on and carry this pregnancy until I'm 40 weeks, and then I show up at labor and delivery and I deliver this baby that is not going to survive. Both options, just horrific. But out of the two, my choice was that I was going to carry her. If those 40 weeks was all I was going to have, then that's what I was going to have. So she went over a list of possibilities as to why the fluid could be low. There were genetic conditions, which many of them we had already ruled out, because with IVF you have to go through a lot of genetic screening. But there were a few more that they could look at to see if they were the cause of the low fluid. So they drew blood right there, because that would take a couple weeks for those results to come back. There were some infectious things that they could look for, viruses and infections that they could draw blood work for and look at, toxoplasmosis and all kinds of things. So we had that done. They said that there could be some placenta issues, which they really, unless it was like something large and screaming, that they could not really even visualize. And it's kind of this other area of like unexplained. So low amniotic fluid is called oligiohydraminos. So low fluid. So with oligiohydraminos, it's like unexplained oligo, which is pretty much, after all of those things got ruled out, is pretty much the category that I was in. There was only one big thing that could have been causing it that we could actually test for and find out that day, which would have been the worst option essentially, was if my water had ruptured, my membranes had ruptured early. So she saw on the ultrasound that my chorion and my amnion, which are two linings of the uterus, were not completely fused together. So she thought, and then there was like a blood clot in between the two linings. So she thought like maybe I was ruptured. And she sent me over to labor and delivery to check and see if my water had broke, which was so scary because at 16 weeks, the baby is not viable. And if I were ruptured and essentially, delivering the baby that early, she was not surviving. So it was just, the whole thing was a nightmare. So I went over to labor and delivery next door. They checked me, they were wonderful, and I was not ruptured. So they sent me home, and the deal is that they were going to continue to monitor me weekly. If I was choosing to continue on with the pregnancy, they were going to monitor me very closely weekly, to more so that I did not, there's really no nice way to put it, so that I was not walking around with her in me, that she had not passed, and I was just walking around with her passing inside of me. So that was like our plan. I went weekly to MFM to have scans, and a little bit about the fluid. So the baby is in the uterus, and they're in a sac, which is filled with amniotic fluid. If you think of it like a balloon, and if you put, just say, a baby doll in a balloon, and you fill that balloon with water, the baby can swim around, it can move, it can stretch, all these things. If the balloon does not have the water in it, it would like shrivel up around the baby. So, the baby doll. So the uterus is the same way with the amniotic fluid. If there's no fluid, then, the lining and everything is shriveled up around the baby, which can cause contractures and cord compression. The baby doesn't have a lot of movement. Weirdly enough, she moved a lot. At 16 weeks, I was feeling movement. Every appointment that we went to, she was either head down or breech, like she would constantly flip. So for subjectively not having fluid around her, she really would, they had no explanation. They're like, I'm like, how is she flipping around with no fluid in there? This is not what the research says should be happening. So again, those little, what the heck? I hear what you're saying, but this is what she's doing. Heartbeat was strong. She was growing on track, and usually these babies have intrauterine growth restriction, so they tend to measure smaller because they're not growing on target. She always was measuring either right on target or a little bit ahead. So the way that they measure the fluid is they look subjectively, so all around the baby, you don't see the fluid, but she always had a small little pocket. She always had a little stomach bubble, and her bladder was always full, so something was getting in. But there's still, and I'm questioning that. I'm like, well, she's swallowing something. She wouldn't have a stomach bubble, and she wouldn't have a full bladder if something wasn't getting in. But they basically were like, it's not enough. It's not enough to develop the lungs. So we continued on, and by the time I reached my 20-week anatomy scan, probably the week before that, I was really suffering, right? I'm choosing to carry this pregnancy. I'm grieving a baby that's inside of me. I have 2 little boys at home to take care of. I can't lose my shit every day I wanted to. It was, physically, mentally, emotionally exhausting. All day long, I would hold it together. I would pretend that life was great. I'd do things with the boys. I asked, the good friends and family that knew about the situation, can we not talk about it, because I can't reel it in, and I cannot get this, I can't convulse on the floor and shake and scream and shout. every single day. Like my body was physically ill, and in pain. So I would fake it all day long, and then I would put the boys to bed, and then I would get in the shower, and I would completely lose my shit every single night. And I would stay up all night losing my shit. I would hysterical cry. I would research stuff. I'd research like down the rabbit hole of like all the horror stories. I'd research, can I find a miracle case? I'd research things that I could do. I was taking L-arginine to increase blood flow. I was drinking like 4 liters of water a day. I wasn't working out so that I didn't break a sweat, to lose fluid, like crazy, you do whatever you got to do to like, I wasn't lifting anything heavy. So anyway, I was really, really, really suffering. I was showing, so having, people at preschool drop off and pick up comment on my belly was like horrible, because they were being so sweet and, excited for me, and I couldn't tell them exactly, I couldn't tell them what was going on, because I would just start hysterical crying in the preschool parking lot, which had been horrible. And I also was having so much difficulty like faking it. So it was really, really hard for me. So I had asked my doctor at MFM if they could refer me to to get therapy and help and counseling on how to like live my life, like how to deal with all of this. Like I was like literally just surviving every day. So I think that there was like some miscommunication on like what I actually needed. So I'm like not holding a grudge against them, but essentially that setup with the bereavement team, instead of like a therapist, they kind of set me up with the bereavement team through Virtua, which included a bereavement nurse, a NICU doctor, a palliative care doctor, and a child life specialist, because I requested child life to help me how to deal with my children. Obviously, I was not telling my children anything, but my 4-year-old knew that I was pregnant, and kissing my belly every day and asking when she can come out and he can hold her, and really was like messing me up with thinking about how are we going to explain this to him when the time comes. Like, so they set me up with all of that. Really, I just needed a therapist, probably a psychiatrist, but this is what they set me up with. So I went to my 20-week anatomy scan, and after that, we went to this bereavement meeting, Brett and I, and God, I will be in therapy for that meeting till I am 60. So essentially, and I know that they're good at what they do, and it's just not what I needed at that very point in time. I needed to like process from like a therapeutic standpoint of what was happening to me before I like went down the road of making delivery day decisions. So they essentially talked to me about what delivery day was going to look like. They asked me to make decisions about her care. If she happened to come out and was like going to survive for just like a couple minutes, during those couple minutes, would we want to give her morphine to make sure that she was comfortable like as she passed? After she passed, would we want to give her a bath and dress her? They recommended that in cases like this, they encourage the siblings to come in and meet the baby, to take family photos. If she has hair, what we like to see. So, it's just, so to cut that short, I went home that day and I was like, they gave me a packet of papers. They told me that they gave me this folder with a packet of papers to fill out and mail in so that I didn't have to do it on delivery day. I didn't open the packet until like 10 o'clock that night. I was up hysterical, you know, the whole night. And I went downstairs and I opened up the folder that they had given me. And I thought, well, I'll just occupy myself. I thought it was like registration paperwork. Like, I'm going to occupy myself and try to, like, you know, fill out some of this insurance crap. It was a death certificate that you fill out and mail in ahead of time. I literally lost it. I don't care if a grandparent is 140 years old and still kicking. I am not filling out a death certificate for anyone ahead of time. Like, I was sick. I'm like, this literally could not get worse. This literally could not get more mentally, emotionally, physically torturous. I literally begged, what have I done to deserve this? Like, how am I going to live the rest of my life? How am I possibly going to live the rest of my life after this? Like, thinking about my children having to live with me as their mom after this is going to be so difficult because I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to find joy in life. So my next appointment that I went to, I said to my doctor that I do want to receive a second opinion with CHOP. They set that up, and I you know, made the appointment with CHOP. They essentially said, you know, you can go over there and get the second opinion, and, you know, they're most likely going to say the same thing, and you'll probably just come right back to us because they only see cases if they feel, you know, something can be done. But, you know, by all means, go get your second opinion. And that was okay for me. Like, I just needed to hear from someone else that this was our story. Like, I needed it confirmed. And if I went over to CHOP and CHOP said the same thing, then this is our story. And I have to just suck it up. But, like, I needed that second opinion. Something inside of me was like, I need somebody else. So anyway, the CHOP appointment was a week later, and it's a long day. You're there from 7:30 in the morning until 4:30 at night. So it starts out with a fetal echo, which is an ultrasound of the baby's heart. Long ultrasound. Everything looked great. No heart defects. So after that, we met with our nurse coordinator. She pretty much went over everything with us. You know, she gives you your private cell phone number, everyone. So this department is called the Center for Fetal Diagnostic and Treatment. So they essentially follow high-risk moms. And I'm not just talking like gestational diabetes and high blood pressure. Like, these are babies with severe birth defects, moms that need to undergo surgery with the baby, like the baby undergoes surgery while still in the mom's stomach. It's wild. The department is stunning. The people are incredible, just absolute angels, every single one of them. The technology is state of the art. It's like, you understand why people want to work at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. It's incredible. So, you know, immediately felt like I was in the very best hands. So anyway, the nurse coordinator, personal cell phone number, text me, like, you know, just met with genetic counselors. And then we had a 2-hour anatomy scan. And then after the anatomy scan, we had a little break while we waited for the doctors to go over, the maternal fetal medicine doctors to go over all of our results. And then we had a meeting with them. So we got to meet with Dr. Kalick. All of the doctors, there's a group of them, and you met with different ones every time. But this one is Dr. Kalick. She was the first one we met with. She confirmed that I did indeed have low amniotic fluid. She said, but Adrienne, you don't have no amniotic fluid. You have a pocket. You have one. So they look at amniotic fluid from, they measure all 4 quadrants of the uterus, and they get like an AFI, which is an amniotic fluid index number. And then they also have a DVP, which is the deepest vertical pocket. And they can kind of get 2 different measurements for 2 different scales on like what we're considering, low versus normal. So I always had that one pocket that was like not big. It was small, but it was still something. There's cases that do not have anything. And my AFI was on the lower side. So her first thing was like, yes, you do have low amniotic fluid, but you don't have no amniotic fluid. She was like, basically, she said, I don't know what your baby's going to be like. She said, I don't know how she's, what's to come of her with this low fluid. She said, but what I can tell you is that it is my professional opinion that I will not sit here and say that you will never take this baby home. I am not able to say that to you. I have to meet your baby. I have to meet her. We have to meet her and see what she is like. I'm not going to tell you that she's not going to have a long road. I mean, having the low fluid is dangerous. It is important, but she's, she could make it. She could have a rough road, and if you're willing to go down that rough road with her, then by all means, let's go. But she said, I'm not writing her off. I'm not handing you a death certificate. I'm not writing you off. Obviously, I told her everything. She said, her biggest thing was the lining of my amnion and chorion being separated. Her biggest thing was, which Virtua really didn't touch on, she said that I was at such a high risk of premature rupture of membranes, meaning my water breaking early, and the baby being born prematurely, which would then, whether the baby or not would survive, be due to like the prematurity aspect, even like in a perfect world, even if the baby didn't have low fluid, like if you deliver prematurely, there's a less chance of survival. And that was her biggest worry. So while I was getting like the hope and somebody to like feel like she has it, like giving her just the chance to be the miracle, it was like a punch in the gut, because now it's like, well, I got to make it there. I'm only 20 weeks. I have 20 more weeks to go. And now we're saying that this is an issue, So, like I said, roller coaster ride, right? So she, was like, essentially, you got to make it. Like, we got to make it. Her goal for me was to make it to 34 weeks. She said, if you can make it to 34 weeks before you rupture and deliver, she said, I feel you will one day bring this baby home to your home. And finally somebody was giving her a chance. And not that I thought any different about the prognosis and this and that, but like, I was finally being treated like she was alive inside of me. I felt like, I finally felt like we were, we were in the right place. This was how it was supposed to be. So she said to me, I want you to be followed by us. We want to follow you, and we want you to deliver here. So the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia has a special delivery unit. They were first in the nation to have one, and it is incredible. I was nervous not to deliver at Birchwood because that's all I knew, but I felt, this was definitely where we were supposed to be. This is, if she has a chance, this is her best chance right here at CHOP. This is our very best chance. And I can rest assured for the rest of my life that I did everything to get her the best care possible. Another issue that came up was she had echogenic bowel. So, essentially, like on the ultrasound machine, the baby looks white. Her bowel was bright, like a fluorescent white. This can be problematic. It could be as serious as needing surgery and an ostomy and crazy bowel issues. Or it could be something so simple as she swallowed a little drop of blood and it lit the whole bowel up and there's nothing wrong with it. Also something that we will not know until she's born. We have to meet her. So there was but whatever, we're going to deal with it. It's kind of like the idea of like if you have a toilet bowl and you put one little drop of blood in the toilet and it like the whole bowl lights up red, but really it was just one little drop. Like that's kind of how they explained it. It could be nothing. Or it could be something really serious and she could need surgery right after birth. So anyway, we all agree, we're all on the same page. I'm going to be followed by CHOP. And I'm going to deliver at CHOP. At this point, I have not slept in, I guess I was like 21 weeks when I went to CHOP. So I hadn't slept in 5 weeks. Like I said, I was up all night, every night, and that is not an exaggeration. I literally had not slept. I explained to them that I had not received any type of therapy of any sort, counseling. So the Center for Fetal Diagnostic and Treatment, they have therapists, they have psychiatrists, they have just that deal with moms with these specific diagnoses, like, that are being followed by them. So, and delivering there. So I got to meet with them and kind of like have that support, which was really nice. So then things, got spicy again. We went home that night and the next day I started bleeding. So I called, and I had to go over to the SDU. The special delivery unit is the SDU. So, and get checked, to see what was going on. So scary because I'm 21 weeks. I just get this like glimmer of hope that we're going to make it and we're going to see how she is. And we're getting this chance. And now I'm bleeding and, I'm scared to death that I'm going to lose this baby. So, I was monitored for a while and everything came back that it must have just been that blood clot at the lower uterine segment that they saw on ultrasound, like starting to make its way out, like oddly. But they're like, we're going to put you on bed rest because that lining is not fused. Now you're bleeding. You want to make it. So now we're putting you on bed rest. And she said they're very conservative. Typically they admit people, but she was like, you have 2 little kids at home, blah, blah, blah. Like, you have a long way to go. So we're going to allow you to do your bed rest at home, which at the time felt like a nightmare, right? Had I known, fast forward. So anyway, I go home, I go on bed rest. It felt like a nightmare. But at least I was around my kids. Like I had to have my mom and dad come over, one or the other, taking off work, coming over, and literally doing everything for my kids. I would get up and like either shower or make myself something to eat or like move from like the bedroom to the couch downstairs, from the couch downstairs to the deck,
from the deck. Like I would move about minimally, but I was not taking care of the kids. I was like laying on the couch and watching them play or snuggling with them or like reading a book. But I was not like making them food and changing their diaper, changing Maddox's diaper and helping Axel in the potty and like giving them baths. And so that was like really freaking hard to go from doing everything for them every day. I'm a nurse. I work per diem. So my video cut off. So I'm a nurse and I work per diem and I get the best of both worlds. I get to like be the stay-at-home mom, but also go into work 24 hours a month unless I pick up extra, and be a nurse because I do love working in the ER. And, one day these kids are going to be in school and I'm going to want to pick up more shifts. So it really works out lovely. So anyway, I'm used to being the one home with them and doing everything with them. So it was really hard to just lay and like not have control over like doing the things that I wanted to do, missing out on so much. I didn't get to watch my son play baseball. I didn't get to go take them places. I didn't get to do the preschool pickup and drop off. Luckily, I have an entire village of people who are just incredible. They have scraped us off of the damn floor every day since this diagnosis. They have made meals and pitched in with pick up and drop off for preschool. They have done, watched, because I had to still go to these appointments. They have watched our kids. I mean, my parents, my God, we would have never have made it. Brett works long days. They would come over and all day long or all night if he was on night shift, be here to, take care of them while I laid on the couch. And it really sucks. It really, really sucks to, have to miss out. The one thing I did not miss out on, though, through it all was my Mother's Day tea party with Axel. And I'm so thankful that I was not in the hospital for that. So the only thing that I did was I would go to my doctor's appointments every week, which felt like I was going to Disneyland, getting out and seeing humans and socializing and like stepping out of the house. And I went to that one Mother's Day tea party because over my dead body, would I miss my very first Mother's Day tea party with the child that I tried to have for 3 years and is my Axel boy. So anyway, back and forth to the hospital, back and forth to CHOP, for these scans and watching everything. And everything was really stable. Each week they were like, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great. Everything is really stable. The baby seemed really happy. She was very active. And she started practice breathing before babies even really see that on ultrasound. And it was like this victory in the room. The ultrasound tech would be like, oh my gosh, look at this. And we sometimes watched her suck swallow and we're like, this is crazy. There's no fluid, there's hardly any fluid. And as the weeks went on, fluid started to accumulate a little bit. My amniotic fluid index started to go up. I went from having 1 pocket to 2. And, they basically said, everything kind of stays, this is all great, but everything kind of stays the same as far as like the prognosis, right? Because during those early weeks, we don't know what the damage is. So it's great. And it's a positive that it's accumulating, but we still have to remember, like, you didn't have it for you didn't have this much all those weeks, when it really, was important. So continue on. So anyway, on Mother's Day, my water broke. I was 28 weeks. I was 28 weeks pregnant, and I was going to my mom's house to lay on her couch for Mother's Day. Everyone was going over there, and I was going to just lay on her couch and have breakfast with the family and lay on her couch and whatever, an outing for the boys. I woke up that morning and I went to the bathroom, and when I got up from the toilet, I could tell that I was leaking. And I was like, let me just see, blah, blah, blah. And I continued on with the day and went to her house for breakfast and ate breakfast. And by like 11 a.m., I was like, yeah, this is like every time I stand up, it's like gush. So I'm like, this is definitely, I'm definitely ruptured. This isn't me peeing myself or anything like that. So I called the doctor and they're like, yep, come on over to the SDU. So Brett kept the boys, and my mom took me over. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. She took me over to CHOP, and they checked me out and, saw all the pooling of the fluid, and essentially said that I was not in labor. I wasn't having contractions. The baby's heart rate was great. And I had an appointment 2 days later, and the doctor felt horrible that I was there on Mother's Day. And she said, why don't you go home, and then you'll call and come right back over if anything changes. But if you stay just like this and stay on your bed rest and nothing changes, you can just wait and come back on Wednesday, essentially, to be admitted to the hospital. So I did. And sorry, I was needed. So I went home, and I went back on Wednesday, and still gushing, and they admitted me to the hospital. And I was like, this could not get worse. Like, every time you think it can't get worse, it does. And it's like, I mean, it's just crazy. It was absolutely crazy. I still can't believe this is. So anyway, they admit me to the hospital, which was like wild. And they said, you're 28 weeks pregnant and you are ruptured, and the goal is for you to make it to 34 weeks. And then we will induce you to deliver if you don't go into labor on your own before that. So I was like shocked and wanted to scream, to be away from my kids. And, the whole bed rest thing at home sounded really good then, because at least I got to sit and like watch them and play with them and hold them and kiss them. And now I'm in a hospital in Philadelphia by myself for weeks. And you really think like laying around and watching movies and not doing your mom duties, it sounds like, such a good idea when we're in the thick of it. But after like one day of that, it sucks. It sucks really, really bad. And it not only does it suck, mentally, but physically. I'm still suffering from bed rest issues, hips and back issues, and our bodies are not meant to be laying in a bed for weeks, days, weeks, whatever, months. And I had already been, at least at home, I could like switch it up a little, go from the bed to the couch, lay on our couch. We have a couch on our deck outside. Now I'm in a hospital room. It felt like I was being admitted to jail. Like, I'm in a hospital room. I have to stay in this bed. So they started giving me steroid injections for her lungs to help just in case I went into labor. I was put on a lot of IV antibiotics to prevent infection from the rupture. And then I went on oral antibiotics after that. I was on the monitor, so they were monitoring the baby closely. And I would say after like the 4th, maybe 5th day, I absolutely lost it. I was like, there is no way. So my children, because of COVID, and they were not 12 years old, they were not allowed to come in to see me. So by like day 5, 4 or 5, something like that, I completely lost it. I was not okay. I said, there is no way I can go without seeing my kids. Like, there's none. So they took into account my mental health and everything, and outweighing, the risks of me leaving the room to like go outside to see my kids, because that was the only option that we had. And unfortunately, there was this garden area, but it was like really far. Like, we had to walk through a bunch of different buildings, and then take different elevators to like get down to this like little garden outdoor area where I could safely see my children for their safety. I didn't want to see them out in front of the hospital on Civic Center Boulevard where there's cars ripping around. And yeah, so, it was me going that far. And I had to have somebody come and wheelchair me down there, and I was only allowed out for 1 hour. So horrible to have to like see your children in that way. But it was something. So they were going to allow me to have these visits with them for 1 hour. And of course, like, I couldn't do it every day, but they said essentially whenever I wanted to, once a day for 1 hour, I could get out. So that's how I saw the kids. My mom and Brett would bring them frequently. A lot of times, like, one of them would come get me and one of them would stay with the kids. And then that way I didn't need to like coordinate it with a nurse or hospitality or anything. I could just have them, one of them deliver me and the other one stay with the kids. So, we ate together, we celebrated Brett's birthday. So we made it work. And by all means, my children did not suffer through this. My children are so resilient, and they have so many people that love them and adore them and take such good care of them. And before all of this, I would say, oh, my kids could never live without their mom. Mine could, because they have the world's greatest dad. My husband never skipped a beat. I'm so lucky that he works full time, and he is on the SWAT team, and he's on all these committees for work, and he still makes an effort to come home and help, whether it's cooking or cleaning or giving the kids a bath, in our regular life. So he, stepped right up in taking over every single thing. Essentially, a single father raising 2 small children, without a mom at home, and never once complained. And he took them to go buy a new truck at the dealership. He took them out to dinners. He took them to, children's events. I mean, just brought them to see me. They really did not miss me. I mean, they did, but they did not suffer in any way. And we had so many friends help out. My parents, of course, whether it was with the kids, if Brett did not need them for the kids, then my parents every single night, my dad would come up for lunch. My mom and dad would come up together for dinner, in my hospital room. They would take me for my 1 hour to get me fresh air outside for my mental health. Really fortunate, and the best case scenario I had. For me, every night when I would start to lose my shit, I had this window section in my room, and I would look out, and across from me was another part of the building. It kind of like triangled with other windows. And really what would make me reel it in was the fact that I could see into other rooms across from me. And they were all kids in those beds. And, teenagers, toddlers, infants. I could see kids in the beds being poked and prodded, blood taken, medicines going in, tubes everywhere, and the moms on the couch. And I thought those moms would give anything to be in the bed, to be the patient like I am, and have their children at home being loved and cared for and pain-free. And that I would get out of my bed, I'd go shower, and before I got back into bed, I would sit on my couch looking out that window. And while things sucked for me, that always brought me back. It always brought me back that I am so happy that I'm the one in the bed in this hospital, because this hospital is filled with children. We are one small little teeny tiny unit, us moms. The hospital that I am in is filled with sick kids. And I am so glad that my two boys are home with their family, with friends, and I am the one in this hospital. So anyway, the special delivery unit was incredible. I formed relationships with housekeeping. Brett would come up and take me for a walk, and he'd be like, I cannot with you and all these people. And I'm like, this is my family. This is who I have. Everybody else has work and is taking care of the kids and stuff like that. So these are my people. The girl who brought me my food every day. I mean, just, it made such a difference. Nurses who believed in the power of touch, and knowing that I was not receiving a hug from my husband every day like I normally would. She would sit on my bed and hug me and squeeze me like ridiculously long, and you have no idea what that can do for a person who hasn't, who's not getting that type of affection every day. And social workers bringing me things, and I have the most amazing friends who work for CHOP who would make it a point during their shift to come up and sit with me, bring me lunch, bring me things. I had friends sending things into the hospital, family sending things into the hospital for me to do, care packages. I mean, I had nurses getting me like mini fridges so that I didn't have to walk down the hall to fill up a water bottle. Like I could just, I had a fridge full of stuff if I didn't want to order room service. So as much as it sucked, there was a lot of love and goodness that came from it. I was well taken care of, as much as it sucked. And I have to say that her delivery was so special. They really know that your pregnancy is so medical that they really try there to give you a really special delivery. And my room was filled with my CHOP friends, my CHOP family, nurses. The cleaning girls stayed for overtime and got to come into the room, and it just felt like there were 40 family members surrounding me, which sounds crazy, but it was really, really something special to see everyone's faces that have been taking such good care of me for 6 weeks light up. So it truly was amazing. So anyway, back on track. My fluid was accumulating up until that point, so I did have a pretty decent amount of fluid, even though my water was broken. And it was like more of like a slow leak, so I would have like gushes, obviously if I stood up to go to the bathroom or take a shower or whatever, get in the wheelchair. But everything remained stable. She was so happy. I was monitored 3 times a day. They would come in and do non-stress tests. I had all sorts of support through CHOP. I was still seeing therapists there, who was wonderful. The OBGYNs, there's 4 of them. All 4 of them were amazing. I was so fortunate to have one that I made a special connection with actually deliver Olive. Her and the midwife were actually fighting over who was going to catch the baby, because we had built such a rapport. One thing that I was
so shook up about was the delivery process. So it's pretty wild. You deliver the baby and there is a window, a legit window, just like this one. And the baby comes out and they hand the baby through the window to the NICU team who is in the resuscitation room on the other side of the window. So while that felt really good to like know that that's how it happens, I also was mourning, like, you know, the boys came up onto my chest, they breastfed within the first hour, they stayed with me, and we went home like literally a day later. So I was mourning that whole idea of a delivery my entire pregnancy, worried about how that was going to feel emotionally, like the baby coming out and going through a window and then down to the NICU. So there were like a lot of things that were really hard for me, and I conveyed, and they did a great job of like saying, you know, we're going to do our best. You know, the first thing is the importance of her health. And then the second thing would be, you know, we're going to do our best to give you something. So the goal was to keep me pregnant until 34 weeks. And at 34 weeks, the risk of infection of either myself or Olive developing sepsis, because I'm ruptured, outweighs the risk of prematurity. So they induce at 34 weeks. So at 34 weeks, they induced me. They could not get me into labor. Her, Olive, and my body were like, we're good. So they induced me on a Monday, June 6th, 7 o'clock in the morning, you know, and they couldn't get me into labor. I was like doing crossword puzzles and, you know, chit-chatting and starving. And it wasn't until probably Tuesday, they like were throwing all different meds at me. And finally Tuesday evening, like around 6 o'clock, I started to go into labor, and I didn't have an epidural with the boys, kind of missed the mark, and that was like, you know, not the best time, but I was like, I know I can do it without an epidural if this is going to go fast, because I had the boys fast. So I was like, I'm expecting to deliver her fast because she's going to be smaller, right? She's premature, and the boys were pretty big, and I delivered them fast. So I'm like, you know, if I don't get the epidural, I can get down to the NICU quicker. So if I can handle it, I'm going to. But if this is going to be like long and drug out, like I don't need to be a hero, you know. Let me do this pain free. I've endured enough. So I was kind of like on the fence with the epidural thing. So once they got me into labor, and I was like, this has already been so long, I was like, I don't want to like continue to suffer. So I said, let me just get my epidural. So I got the epidural, and wow. What a difference. Not feeling like everything. So got the epidural, was like sitting pretty, and if after 3 hours they need to straight cath you, because they need to like empty your bladder because you can't feel it yourself and they don't want your bladder to rupture. So the nurse came in and did that, and she was like, okay, like we will we'll check in on you, let us know if you need anything. And she left the room, and like very soon after I was like, press the call bell, Brett. And he's like, not pressing it. And I'm like, no, I'm dead serious. Like, press the call bell. Like, the baby's coming. And he is like not believing me or whatever. And hands me the TV remote thing. And I press the call bell, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have this baby. And so of course, like, you know, they're all rushing in, and they're rushing to get the NICU up there. And, you know, her head's right there. And they're like, you know, can you please wait a minute? Classic for my deliveries. That's pretty much how it went with everyone, all of them. It was like, can you please not push until we get sterile stuff out? So I pushed through the first contraction, and by the second contraction starting, I started to push, and they were like, hold on. And then they were like, okay, go ahead. And she was here very fast. And she came out pink and crying. The sweetest sound.
that cry. And the doctor put her on my chest as the NICU was calling for her through the window and said, I'm trying to find my scissors to cut the cord. I can't find them. So that I could have a minute with her and see her face and feel her. And then she handed Brett the scissors and like let him cut the cord. And then they were really yelling for her. So she held her up and walked backwards and then passed her through the window. And she said, you know, it's really good news when the respiratory therapist is in the room making your baby a hat with a bow. She needed no respiratory support. She needed a little bit of glucose. Her blood sugar was a little low, which is common in premature babies. So they gave her a little bit of glucose. They hooked her up to a dextrose IV. They actually put the line through her belly button. It's an umbilical line, and that was about it. They put a little tube in her nose to see if there was anything wrong with her stomach because of the bowel issues. That was just kind of, to see. Once they did an x-ray and an ultrasound and found out that there was nothing wrong with her bowel, they were able to pull that tube, and I was able to start feeding her. Obviously, they did, they checked her out, and they put her in the isolette and under the warmer, and they actually, after they settled her on their way to go to the NICU, they wheeled her entire warmer into my room, and the nurses picked her up and let me hold her for probably 6 or 7 minutes before they went down to the NICU. So I got to just have a moment with her and see her and everything. So it was really, really so special for something that was going to be so hard and traumatic for me. So she was mind-blowing. Not only did she not need any support, they felt that she was extremely healthy for a 34-weeker, besides all of the low fluid stuff. They called her the healthiest 34-weeker they ever saw. They were ready to send her home. They said they couldn't do the car seat test because you can't do that before 35 weeks. And the doctor's like, I didn't even realize, because we typically never send 34-weekers home this early. It was just, they were mind blown. They actually asked me, do you think you got the dates wrong? She was 5 pounds 7 ounces, which was a really good size for 6 weeks early. They actually asked me, do you think that you got your dates wrong and when she was due? And I was like, well, no, because I'm IVF. So the dates are dead set, accurate. But that's how they felt. They felt that they were like, maybe she's full term, maybe or almost full term. It was unbelievable. The whole thing was just crazy. So she spent 12 days in the NICU, essentially just being monitored, making sure that she was growing on track. She was able to nurse right away. She was taking a bottle of breast milk right away, doing wonderful. She went under the Billy lights one day for her bilirubin being a little bit elevated, and that's basically the max of what and one day she was not eating as much. She was kind of tiring out, which is common in premature babies. So they did put an NG tube in, and the plan was to whatever she didn't finish by her bottle or by the breast, they would put the rest of the breast milk down the NG tube in her nose so that she would get all of her calories to gain weight and everything. And as soon as they put that in, she started taking all of her feeds again. So they ended up pulling it. But she is definitely a miracle. She is, it's wild. It's just, there are no words, and I don't know if I will ever look at her and not like just see like she's one crazy little girl. So that's her story, and it's so crazy that you know, she's here and she's perfect, and that we get to keep her forever. Again, I hope that this story is someone's survival guide one day. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. And that's about it. If you've made it this far, I know this is really long. I so appreciate you listening. I feel like this answers a lot of questions that people may have about what happened with her. You know, it's really hard for me to like just tell it all. When I see people and they ask if they haven't been along for the entire ride. So anyway, her name is Olive Faye Lightner. She was born on June 7th in 2022. I have always loved the name Olive, even before I was trying to have babies. That was always my top girl name contender, and I stuck with it. And her middle name is Faye, after her grandmom, her great grandmom, who I so believe had a hand in the pot. Definitely an angel looking down on the two of us. And she was born at 10 o'clock at night. She was 5 pounds, 7 ounces, and she is absolutely beautiful. She is absolutely thriving, and I know she's going to do great things. She's going to be something else. So watch out. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, I missed a lot. I missed a lot of things, but I won't even bother because it doesn't matter. You get the gist, but the one thing that I missed was I wanted her to have her debut on this YouTube video, right? This is Olive. I did her whole introduction, but forgot to grab her. Because I am so nervous that this is, but anyway, this is Little Miss Olive. She is going to be 4 months old on Friday. It is Tuesday, and she is an angel baby sent from above in more ways than one. She's an angel because she's here, and she also is just an angel in her temperament. She is so happy. Say yeah. Say hi. Can you show everybody how you can smile? Yeah. Show them. What? She's tired. She's ready for her nap. But I had to grab her and show her off. Say hello. Yeah. I want to eat her alive. She is the most delicious thing. I cannot get enough of her. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Right? These cheeks. To know her is to love her. And now you know her first chapter. And I hope that you all see her the way that I do, as a little miracle baby. Right? Not so little. Right? Yeah. Okay. That's it.